Good morning.
Morning, how are we? How are you?
Thursday.
It's Thursday.
Bit of a heavy day yesterday.
Got shopping, didn't we?
Yeah, holiday shopping with our girls. Not a pretty sight.
Can you imagine?
I feel hungover today. That's how bad it was. It was a bit of a journey.
Yes, but
It's
we're
good
here.
though.
We're
Good
here.
morning. It's Tuesday.
Tuesday, what day is today?
Pat,
The 9th.
you having a laugh?
The 9th of
August. It's
9th
not the
of
9th,
August.
it's the 10th.
Oh, it's the 10th? Oh, wow.
10th, which means how many days to my birthday?
19, is it?
How many days to my birthday?
18.
18 days to my birthday. It is my birthday.
Well, it's just on this. Can you put up my verse this morning,
Our verse
please?
this morning is Matthew chapter 5, verse 19.
And what are you going to say?
I don't know that this is a verse that we own. I don't think it's one that would jump out at us.
Right.
So let's have a look. So it's after Jesus. You tell them the background.
It's after Jesus heals this man from being demon possessed.
Yeah. So it's when he's walking.
A man that has suffered, actually. Let's not leave out the demon stuff.
Okay.
A man that really has suffered dreadfully for years.
Okay.
And that nobody could help.
Okay.
And Jesus comes along and helps this man.
Okay.
Remarkably.
Yeah.
Basically, this guy in this story.
Sets him free, doesn't he?
He sets him free, but as you always say, let's go into the man's life.
Do a little bit because the verse is just a little bit sort of, non-eventful.
So it's one of these stories that is in the New Testament, and for me, it's quite a remarkable story because it's about a man that really suffers and has suffered for years and has lost everything: his family, his friends, and says that nobody could help this man. He was in such
beyond help.
A dreadful situation.
So he would have been ostracized.
Yes, he lived among the caves. Can you imagine? Lived among the caves in chains.
It's funny, actually. I've just finished a book, one of my holiday books, and it's about the island of Spinalonga, where the lepers were sent. So I've spent like the last few days just sort of getting into that sort of thinking of the isolation and the rejection, and so he would have been that kind of person, even though he didn't have leprosy, he would have dealt with it.
Yeah, but he would have suffered, and I think people miss out on that story. He would have suffered greatly, and I remember years and years ago being when one of my daughters were born, and I realized, everyone is born like this. Everyone's born into the world perfect and pure, and whatever happened to that man, we don't know the story. We don't know the full background, but whatever happened to him, he ends up in a very, very difficult and dark place.
Yeah.
And Jesus, for me, represents the church. He represents.
So you do have to say it, like the man is known in the scriptures as being demon possessed.
Yeah.
And Jesus comes along.
And so Jesus comes along and helps this man in great suffering and sets him free.
And he runs after Jesus then, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he runs after Jesus and he says, Jesus, Lord, can I come and follow you? And Jesus says, no. I want you to go and tell your family, your friends, and in some translations, go and tell different towns and villages what I've done for you.
So will I read it?
Yeah.
So this is the scripture we're looking at this morning. So he asks, can he go with him, doesn't he? Which is actually, it actually reinforces that rejection and that isolation. This man is demon possessed. He's living amongst these people and he's just on his own and he's come out of these caves. Jesus sets him free and he runs after him because it's the first time he's experienced love and kindness and mercy. But it says, Jesus did not let him come. And instead, he said to him, go home to your family and tell them the great things that the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. It's beautiful. And then the first version was the Amplified, I think. And the second one is the Voice, which isn't one I normally use. But it says, this is what he says to him, which actually quite affects you again. Stay here. Stay here. I want you to go back home to your own people and let them see what the Lord has done, how he has had mercy on you.
Wow.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Well, I believe, what's happened over the last 18 months has made the church a church with no walls, really. Most churches now are not static anymore. We're sort of being forced out of a static situation into the world. But what really affects me about this man, the first thing Jesus says, go tell your family what the Lord has done. Yeah. And if there was ever a time, it's amazing and remarkable, this story. It's not one of the chances pops out. Like, if there's ever a time to go and tell people what Jesus has done in your life, and maybe maybe you didn't suffer as bad as this man. Maybe you weren't demon possessed. Maybe you weren't in that dark situation, but you're in some situation. that God himself had to come and
He's
find you.
transformed us, isn't he?
Yeah, and set you free. I mean, for me, it was at 23 years of age in the middle of Spain. You know, the Lord appeared to me and set me free, and you know, it came to a wonderful moment of salvation. From that moment on, I have told people for years and years what God has done for me.
I can vouch for that.
And Sharon,
From the chip shop to the everywhere we go.
Yeah, Sharon's not going to Shasta, or is going to chipper
He
with
used
her.
to, if he goes into a shop,
So,
right, I'm in the car with the kids and he takes a bit long to go, oh my gosh, that man must be getting the gospel.
He is getting the gospel. He is getting the gospel. He has to get, because I have to tell people about this wonderful man.
But there is something it says here, right? Let me tell
Right,
you
come on.
something else. It says here, stay here. I want you to go back home to young people and let them see what the Lord has done. So let me ask you that. You know, do people see what God has done in our lives?
Wow.
So, you know, we can talk a lot, and I think that's the problem with a lot of Christians, and a lot of the problem that people have with Christians is that, look at my hair, so info hair, is that we have that whole, we talk a lot, we quote scriptures, we can preach at people, but are we showing them?
Yeah.
So it's one thing to tell people what God has done in your life, but it's another thing to show people what God has done in your life. And I think it should be evident. Like when this man went home, he was completely transformed.
Yeah.
His whole life had been transformed, but he was transformed. And we don't know how, you know, this thing that this affliction was affecting him. But he would have been a new person. And I think sometimes as believers, it's so important that we not just learn to not practice the speaking of what God has done, but also practice the living of what God has done in our lives. And I think that's, for me, that's been the real thing in COVID, is really, I mean, we all live as Christians and we all want to think that we're good people as such. And it's not that we're called to be good, but we're called to live kingdom. And kingdom is such a generous, loving, inclusive place. And I know for me, that's been the real thing in COVID. I mean, I've always tried to live like that, but COVID has offered me more opportunity then, if you like, to do that. And I have seen firsthand how that has impacted my own family or the people around me. And I've seen so many people open their hearts or open their lives to talk and share because we've shown them what God has done in our lives, that we're new people. And it doesn't mean that we have to be at the extremes of this man, but all of us have been redeemed. Absolutely. All of us have been transformed. And that should be a living testimony.
That's it.
Isn't it? Like, was it Thomas Aquinas who said, you know, if all else fails, use words.
St. Augustine.
St. Augustine said, I knew something like that. Said, you know, if all else fails, use words. So our lives should be a living testament. I'm sure when this man went home, look, it says, go home to your family and tell them the great things the Lord has done for you. And here, show them. So we need to tell them, but we also need to show them.
Well, it's two, you know, it's two sides of a coin, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, it's both sides, you know. And so I think for me, I remember years ago meeting an old mate of mine. And in the middle of a shopping centre, and he looked at me and he said to me, I'm not great, listen, this is about the Lord. He said, what happened to you?
Yeah.
And I remember my sister-in-law coming, and we were in the band, and it's gone about 30 years ago, and she'd been baptized in the Holy Spirit, and she walked into the rehearsal studio. We were rehearsing for a gig, and I remember looking at her and I remember saying, what's happened to you? Her face was shining. There was a glow. There was something that was drawing me.
Reflection.
Of something that I'd never seen before. I'd seen something had happened, something had changed, and even when my brothers could say, I saw something had changed in them. They were speaking different, they were behaving different, they were talking different, they were living different. And that was the thing that was drawing me towards them, was the change. And I believe, you know, there's so many in the New Testament. I'm reminded of the man at the pool of Bethsaida, you know, when he's healed and Jesus, go home, take up your mat and go home to your family. Imagine when the family opened the door and saw the man walking, living, something had changed him, something had impacted him. And we as Christians, we're called to impact our families. We're called to impact our friends.
I think that's really important. Can I say that? Can I jump in there? He says to him in all of these versions, go home to your family. Go home to your own people. And I think sometimes that's another thing as believers. We concentrate so much on living that testimony out in the streets that we don't live it in our homes or in our families. And I don't know, this morning, you know, if you have family members that you're not in touch with, family members that you've fallen out with, family members that you just don't relate well to, can I ask you this morning that we go home and show them what God has done in our lives, because it's so important. And that's what Jesus didn't say go into all the world to him. He said that to others, but to him he said, go home and show your family. Go home and tell your family.
Yeah.
And this morning, I just feel God speaking to us, like, go home to your family. Like, how are we ministering to our family, to our own children, to our brothers and sisters, to our mothers and fathers, uncles and aunties, cousins, you know? I don't know, lately I've had such a burden just for my family, just to be that person in my family, to love my family, extended family. And, you know, that's what Jesus said, and go home and show them, tell them what God has done. And our testimony, I think Jonathan just put up there, you know, our lives need to back up our testimony. We need to live that testimony in our family units. It's so important that we live it in the family, because there's nothing worse than just preaching something and being something outside the front door, as so many people can relate to. I mean, I'm blessed, you know, I was raised in a Christian home, and, you know, pretty much what I saw outside is what I saw inside. We all have our ups and downs, but, you know, the testimony of Christ, my father, my mother lived it in our home. And that's where we need to minister and show the love of God and what God has done in our lives. Tell them, our own family. And this morning, it's one thing to go out into the community and reach the lost. But can I ask this morning, are there lost in your own home, in your own extended family members, that maybe you haven't spoken to for years, maybe you haven't heard of, not because you've fallen out, but you just don't see them and you don't know. You could be the light of God in their lives.
Absolutely.
And God has called you and placed you in your family, in your life, in your home, in your village, but in that family unit to be that light of Christ.
Well, you see, at the end of the day, Jesus made a reference to it. He said to him, you go to your family. So when Jesus says that, that's pretty important. So for me, when Jesus, you know, and I think sometimes we jump over words or we just go through things, but Jesus made it very clear to that man, you go home now.
Yeah, share.
Go home to the ones that haven't seen you for years. Go home to the ones that thought you were lost and broken. Go home to the ones that saw you suffer and hear you build you. Go home to the ones that lost a brother, maybe lost a husband, maybe lost a father. We don't know the ins and outs of this man, but had lost something special. Go home and show them what I've done. Show them what I've done. Show them how
Let
God
them see
can
it firsthand.
change a man that was lost, that was broken, that was destitute, that was isolated, that was restricted, that was tormented, that was completely smashed. Go home and tell your family and show them what I've done in
Be
your
a
life.
living testimony.
And I believe, the scriptures don't tell us this, but I believe his whole family got saved
probably.
because of what they saw and what they heard.
But the transformation has been massive.
Oh, massive, yeah.
Absolutely massive. So this morning we just want to encourage you to just go back home to your own people and tell them what the Lord has done. Show them what God has done in your life. And I just encourage you this morning, and I just feel that burden on my heart. Just, you know, sit down and just think about people you've lost touch with, school friends, family members, extended family, cousins. You know, so many of us grow up with all of our cousins. I'm sure of that. Like, I've moved away from my homeland, if you like, so I don't see a lot of my cousins and everything, but I've recently spent so much time just reaching out, just to be in their lives again, and just to pray for them, and just to know where they're at and what they're going through, and how I can just pray for them and love them from where I'm at.
Show them.
So reach out, you know, just think of school friends, anybody in the past that you just haven't. Go home to them and tell them what the Lord has done for you, because that's where we begin. And Jesus sends him back. He doesn't say go into the world, go into the villages, go into the cities. Go to your own family, go to your own home, even though he wanted to go.
Yeah.
He wanted to go with him. He wanted to travel. He wanted to do what he wanted to serve the gospel, I'm sure. But Jesus said, no, this is where it begins. And this morning, I just feel God is saying that to us again.
Yeah.
This is where it begins, people. This is where it begins. It begins at home with your families. It begins at home with your neighbours. Have you got a neighbour this morning that's in need? You might not get on with them. Reach out to them this morning. Show them the mercy. That's how he has had mercy on you. That's what it's.
Yeah.
Show them the mercy and the love of God in your life.
Amen, Sean.
Amen. So we will
see you on Thursday.
Yeah, on Thursday.
Thursday.
And we'll try to look a little bit more less
disheveled.
disheveled.
I'm okay.
We went shopping with our 3 girls yesterday.
I'm looking good. I'm feeling good. My wife was hard. I was standing outside most of the time waiting on the girls.
Exhausted.
So listen, have a great,
bit more bright-eyed.
great week, blessed week,
yeah,
and an encouraging week. And go tell someone, show someone the mercy of God.
And can I just say, I just want to thank you all for faithfully coming on here, for encouraging us, for all you guys that come on. It really means so much to us. And even when we're here, it's so nice when I see the little eyes popping up, how many are watching, just to get those messages that you're just interacting. It's just so precious, isn't it, in these times, to talk. I feel like I'm talking with you across the miles to Australia and Ireland and UK, wherever we are. Just so nice, just reaching out.
I'm so grateful for the 100,000 that listen in.
That's not relevant.
That's not relevant.
So you know what I'm saying? It's great. It's just so good with all that's going on that we're able to reach out and just talk and just mull over scriptures on a Thursday and a Tuesday.
It's fantastic.
So God bless you all, and we will see you on Thursday.
Thursday.
All right, take care. Have a great day,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.